Next presentation is actually going to be a talk by three individuals. It's going to be on backyard buoys, bridging Indigenous knowledge and technology. And so one of the speakers is John Hobson Jr. He's with the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. He's an Inupiaq whaling captain and a subsistence hunter. He's also a provider for his family and for the village of Wainwright. And John's been in many different positions. Many of these he's currently in as well. Of the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission, the North Slope Borough Assembly, and on the board of directors, president of the Wainwright Tribal Council, president and board member of the North Slope Borough, president of the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, president and chairman of the Ugulik Corporation, council member of the Arctic Slope Inupiaq community, and mayor of the city of Wainwright. Jenny Evans is also joining us in the center chair. She also works with the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. She's been working on a variety of issues on mitigating impacts of vessel traffic on subsistence villages, looking at food security, looking at the preservation of Yupik and Inupiaq culture, and then supports the AEWC's work with federal agencies and the IWC. Oops, sorry, I'm going backwards. Jenny is also a filmmaker. She's filmed and produced Agvigam Ilutkusia, The Spirit of the Whale, which is looking at the AEWC's efforts to continue bowhead whale hunts. She's the owner and operator of Rural Alaska First, which is working across Alaska to build capacity with Alaska Native organizations, tribes, and villages. She's born in Glen Allen, raised in Homer, and she's a lifelong Alaskan. And our third speaker is Shanna Wisdom, who's the executive director of the Alaska Ocean Observing System. Prior to that, she was an environmental consultant for about 20 years, running large-scale projects up in the Chukchi and working on a variety of issues from marine mammal permitting and compliance, noise analysis and monitoring, and Alaska Native community engagement. She has a BS and a master's in marine science. She grew up in New Mexico. She's lived in Alaska for 18 years, and she is a top-of-the-line fast-pitch softball coach at Diamond High School. So those are our three speakers. And apparently there's some people who know about that in the audience. So they're going to be talking about this Backyard Buoys program, and Shanna's brought one of the examples up front. And this is a project that bridges Indigenous knowledge as well as Western science and technology. So it's pulling in ocean observing systems, it's pulling in Indigenous knowledge and community partners, and it's got a communications and an outreach element as well. And as Lynn mentioned in the beginning, it's really a great model of co-development and of community-led research. And so I will turn it to the three of you to carry it forward. Thanks for coming. This is
All right, we wanted to change up the rules because if the three of us tried to stand at the podium, my bows would have come out and someone would have been hurt. So, so we're doing this as a panel instead. Thanks everyone for coming up to the Alaska Marine Science Symposium. Thank you to those of you that brought the winter for us because yesterday my grass was green. So we're really excited to be here to tell the story of the Backyard Buoy program, and I really appreciate NPRB asking us to be keynote speakers. I'm here with my friends and colleagues, John and Jenny. We just had lunch kind of going through this and realized we've been working together for a lot of years, a lot of good stories. It's really about co-production, co-design, all the words that are kind of being talked about, but it's really about bridging the Indigenous knowledge, Western science, and implementing co-production rather than just talking about the words. All right. Oh, that skipped way ahead. There we go. Okay. So I'll just do a brief introduction of us, and you just heard a lot of that, so I don't need to go into more of it. But we've worked together for a lot of years. Working in the Chukchi together since 2008, which is weird to say that that's close to 20 years ago. That messed me up. So we'll go into what the project is. Jenny and I have worked with the AWEC and co-management organizations for a lot of years. I was hired a lot of times by oil and gas companies to help negotiate conflict avoidance agreements. As a marine mammal permitter, I was dealing with a lot of the marine mammal compliance programs, working with AWC. And Jenny and I found out that we are really inappropriately smartasses, and you never would want to see our text between each other during AWC meetings, because we would probably piss people off, but that's okay. And we're kind of listening to all of the research and all of the organizations coming up and presenting research to AWC, and we started throwing around ideas of how we could do better at co-production. And when I moved over to AUSE 4 years ago, I was in the right role to be able to do something about that. And then we had some National Science Foundation funding through the Convergence Accelerator come through as an opportunity. And so we started just throwing ideas around of how we could make this happen, how we could actually put together a program that really implemented co-production. And so that's where this came from, is this Backyard Buoy program. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, the steps in this. But what we're trying to do is just tell some of the stories here. So we're going to be switching the mic around quite a bit and prompting stories. So with this, I will turn it over to John. Got it.
Thank you. Shana, can you all hear me? I think I'll run up to the podium there. But I wanted to try something different. I see cameras facing us, taking pictures. I'm going to actually take one of all of you.
Hands up.
There you go. No, I thought that was funny. Thank you for having us here this afternoon. My name is John Hobson Jr. I serve as the chairman of Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. I'm the commissioner and whaling captain for the village of Wainwright. I'm pretty much responsible for making sure my family eats, as all of you do the same. But we don't just do it for our family, we do it for our whole community and those that come into our community and we share our catch with. I also, aside from subsistence hunting, I wear a lot of hats. As the introduction showed, I serve as the president of the Wainwright Tribal Council. I am a board member and the president of the North Slobora School District Board of Education. I am a longtime past assembly member for Wainwright, and also I served for 6 or 7 years as the president of the North Slobora Assembly. I had some time also on the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation Board of Directors, and I've served on our Regional Tribal Council organization as a council member, and a long-term city mayor for the city of Wainwright for quite some time. Most often in our villages, our captains and hunters are also leaders, and we take both responsibilities very seriously. But our time is spread very thin. Our subsistence hunters are a matter of survival and must always take priority in whatever we do. This is important for you to understand as you develop your research project and engage with our communities. As leaders, we want to provide input on projects, but if they fall during our harvest season, we must choose hunting for our survival over your project. As Inupiat, we are Alaska's first people, hunters and stewards of our land. The Arctic has been our home of our ancestors for thousands of years, and it is where we live, raise our families in our traditional ways of life, and provide for them from the resources we hunt, gather from the land and the sea. Yeah, we'll go to slide 6, right? Since time immemorial, we have relied on subsistence resources for more than just food security. The communal nature of our subsistence activities is at the center of our culture. It is what defines our social structure and provides a means for us to pass traditional knowledge from generation to generation. The next slide. We are, when we're not hunting, we are preparing to hunt and putting away what we've harvested. Everything we've harvested has a purpose and it's for utilization and nutritional. Each species has a harvest season, and our calendars are guided by that schedule. It is in the best interest. It's a greatest honor to be a whaling captain and provide for our communities. Our successful hunts are celebrated and shared with the entire village, often with other villages as well. Sharing of our harvest is an Inupiat value that has been passed to us from our ancestors and will continue to pass to our children and grandchildren. Relying on multiple species from the land and the sea, our food security and cultural survival relies on access to multiple species. Although the buoyed whale is our primary resource, many of our whaling villages hunt beluga, polar bear, seal, walrus, caribou, and many different bird species. And about 80% in my family, our food comes from the land and the sea that I harvest. It's very rare that we get to treat ourselves with a steak or a burger in our hometown. I mentioned this to you today because I am here representing the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. But the AWEC is just one of the Alaska Native subsistence hunter organizations. And although we have representatives from other regions, it does not mean we speak on their behalf. And let me say that again. Although we have representatives from different regions, it does not mean we speak on their behalf. This is something that's important to remember when you engage with an organization like ours. The engagement, or as you call it, consultation, with the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission should not be considered as a consultation with all coastal villages and hunter groups. We have a strong voice, but we are not the only voice. Again, we are a very strong voice, but we are not the only voice. The original stewards of the Arctic. Our understanding of our place in the world is based on a deep respect for all creation. For thousands of years, we have lived in harmony with the ecosystem, understanding the balance between resource and need. Our responsibilities as whaling captains extend beyond feeding our families and villages throughout history. Our whaling captains have managed to whale harvest, ensuring respect for the whale and protecting its habitat. Stewardship is a Western term. To us, it's a concept of something we have committed for thousands of years, and we are culturally and spiritually tied to the land and sea, the bountiful resource they provide for our people. For thousands of years, we have adapted to change and proved ourselves resilient. Our ancestors passed to us a deep understanding of the environment and the ecosystem. And this provides us with the knowledge that can't be found in textbooks or classrooms. We understand the cycles of nature and the seasons. We understand the migration patterns and how they change. We understand how to survive in locations most couldn't imagine. Today, change comes from many directions, and it's an increased rate of speed. As I'm reminded and grateful for the knowledge passed to us from our ancestors, it provides a perspective that expands thousands of years before our lifetime. This knowledge can be shared with you and benefit your research if you include us in the development of your projects. before it is designed and funded. That doesn't happen now. Instead, researchers come to our meetings, spend about 15 minutes telling us what they are going to do and when they're going to do it. That's not asking for our input, the project design or methodology. They're just checking the box that they've consulted with AEWC. This is why I'm so happy to be here today talking about the Backyard Buoy Project. In Washington, D.C., they have created a buzzwords like consultation and co-production. They also talk about the inclusion of traditional and indigenous knowledge in research projects. We've heard this coming from D.C. for many years now, but have not seen it applied in practice until this project came to us. This is the first time we've been approached to truly partner and co-produce a project. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jenny, and she will speak a few words about the buoy development in Wainwright. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm going to sit, if that's okay. They told me this was going to be the over 40 room, so I thought it would be a little more light and I could read. So now I have to put my readers on and take them off. So if you're under 30 or under 40, you have to leave. This is the readers only room. Well, again, my name is Jenny Evans, and I work with the AEWC. This is my boss, and I'm not going to go into my background because he went over it pretty well earlier. So you can just know that I'm Jenny and I'm a worker bee. And some people like to combine the names and just say Jenny Evans real quick. So it's one name. And I'm thrilled to be here today because I'm looking into the audience and I see my friend Seth Danielson, and I saw Kate earlier, and I know Rafaela's here somewhere, and a bunch of scientists that have been to our meetings. And so now I get to be in front of all of you, and I think it's fantastic, and you're going to have a hard time getting me off stage. So when we talk about, when John was talking about the increased interest in the Arctic, what's happened to the AEWC, we used to have a big interest from the oil industry that was doing a lot of offshore work that might impact the bowhead whale and its habitat. And we've seen a big shift in that over the last 5 to 10 years, where now the oil companies used to take up about 3/4 of a day or an entire day during our triennial meetings, and there's been a big shift. So now we're bombarded with research organizations and researchers themselves that want to come to our meetings and present their projects as a part of consultation. It's a big burden to the ANOs, including the AEWC. It's not that we don't want to engage and be consulted with. It's just we have limited funding. We're an ANO. We're a co-management organization. We co-manage the bowhead harvest through a cooperative agreement with NOAA, and we're provided some funding through grants from NOAA and the North Slope Borough, but it doesn't fully fund what's required for us to meet the mandates of the International Whaling Commission or what's required of our co-management agreement. We used to have quarterly meetings, so 4 meetings a year, and because our budget has been slowly going down for our funding, we only have money now for 3 meetings a year, thus the triennial meetings. And the amount of research projects that are presented to us can take up to, the requests can take up to 2 days to hear all the projects. And it's not, 4 hours for one project. It's like 15 minutes is the limit, right? And so what kind of meaningful interaction is really happening in 15 minutes? But it also adds an entire day or 2 to our meetings. And that's without funding. That takes away from the time we have to work on our co-management responsibilities. So with that said, in recent years, starting in 2023, the National Science Foundation, after years of talking with them, are providing funding to pay for 1 day of 2 of our triennial meetings, and we call it Science Day now. But if you look at 1 day and break up lunch and any breaks, that's about 10 presentations and that's it. So we still have to turn people away because we can't do more than that, funding-wise and time-wise. Okay, next slide, please. So this provides a lot of challenges for the AEWC and I'm sure other ANOs. One is capacity, our ability to handle the level of projects that are coming our way and the directions they're coming from, because it's not just federally funded programs, it's also international. So we have them coming from multiple directions, and the capacity to be able to handle them is huge, because there's not just the actual presentation, it's follow-up. We're on some lists where while they're doing the cruise, we're getting updates every day. So it takes staffing time as well to be able to staff these projects and let our whaling captains know. The next one is expertise. The expertise to understand the projects when we have such a short amount of time to hear the projects. We hear 15 minutes in a presentation. It's such a, I mean, you know, you're the researchers, you're doing the projects. Many of them are very complicated. And does 15 minutes really allow us to understand what you're doing and what you want to see in your results? And methodology. There's often been times where I've sat in meetings where researchers present to our commissioners and our whaling captains, and our whaling captains say to them, your methodology is messed up, and this is why it's not going to work. But it's already funded and planned, like John was saying. It's already funded and planned, but the methodology isn't going to be effective. Accountability. Who's ultimately responsible? That's one thing that we struggle with when we have these projects. Like, who do we contact? Because often you have federal funding, and sometimes it's two federal funders, and then you have it going to a university, or you have it going, there's a lot of channels that this funding for the project goes through. So who's ultimately accountable, and who can we go to if there's a problem? And that's not often something that's explained to us, or do we understand it? And funding. Finally, is funding. There's no funding to pay for the consultation and the follow-up. It is a burden. It adds to us. We run a pretty lean staff at the AEWC to meet our requirements for our co-management responsibilities and international obligations. So this is added on top of that burden without any funding. Okay, next slide, please. So I like to call this the cart before the horse. So we feel like the process is flawed. The cart before the horse approach, it's research projects are funded and planned prior to meeting with the ANOs, the people in the Arctic. We think that process has significant flaws to it. Next slide, please. So while I was searching on the internet, and plus meetings I've had with Larry Hinsman, is they've created this federal principles for conducting research in the Arctic, and also the Arctic Research Plan. And both of those talk about the things that our chairman was talking about, engagement throughout the process. These are the words that come out of these documents. Inclusion of Indigenous knowledge, participatory research, co-production of knowledge, meaningful involvement. That's, what does this mean? What does that mean, right? Meaningful involvement and leadership by Indigenous peoples. So those are coming directly from documents that are created through IARPC. And so I'd ask you, as you're planning and thinking of ideas for research, does the process fulfill federal principles and plans for Arctic research? I don't think that it does right now. I think that everyone's on the right track, and I think the intent is there. But that's why this project is so important, is because it takes that next step forward and can maybe be an example for folks that are planning research in the future. So I think that sometimes I like to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and I think that what we don't embrace, or we don't embrace what we don't understand, and that's human nature, right? Human nature, whether it's a belief in, a religious belief or a political belief, we don't embrace what we don't know and don't understand. So understanding Indigenous knowledge, there's many different definitions. I like to keep things simple. I think it's an inherent, holistic understanding of the Arctic that's accumulated through experience and knowledge over thousands of years and passed down from generation to generation. And that's really, it keeps it simple, right? It's not using a lot of words, and that's really what it is. It's a holistic understanding of the Arctic. And so I think to embrace incorporating and combining Indigenous knowledge with Western science, you really have to be able to embrace and understand this to embrace it, right? And if you embrace it, then, the next slide please, then I'd ask you to ask the Indigenous experts. Ask them to participate, because we know that Indigenous knowledge can enhance research methodologies and improve the outcomes. We know this because we've seen projects come to us with methodologies that won't be effective because of Indigenous knowledge that we have. So I'd ask you to continue to try to understand Indigenous knowledge and find ways to incorporate it. And then I like to end on this slide for my part, is one of my favorite quotes is from Harry Brower Jr. This is not the new, when the Navigating the New Arctic came out, he just kept saying, he was really dissatisfied with the word New Arctic. He said, it's not the New Arctic. This has been our home since time immemorial. We understand that it is ever-changing and have adapted to those changes for thousands of years. And it's true. These are the most adaptive group of people, and they know that it's always been changing. This isn't new to them. The changes aren't new. It's something that they've seen. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Shana. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, for those of you that know me, you know I'm kind of the action person, right? So Jenny and John have really set the stage here of why co-production is so important, why it hasn't really been done well in a lot of places. So we're going to talk about the project now, the Backyard Buoy Project. I've had the opportunity in my career to really work in this space and sit at these meetings and listen to the hunters. And I try really hard to listen to that and then figure out how can I make a difference? How can my organization make a difference? And so AEWC was in the right place at the right time to be able to do this. And so we looked at the inclusivity in every step of this project. And so we kind of have up here, there's a few slides of my emotional support buoy is what my staff put a little writing there on for me. So when I travel, I can put my little red vest on her. Up there talking with Harry at the front, and then we had a listening session in AWEC in 2022, just kind of hearing about what is needed, what are some of the challenges, and so we really looked at this to be from every step, and so this is kind of your roadmap of how we looked at co-production. It's Indigenous-led, the expertise is acknowledged, we had adequate funding in all aspects of this for hunters. The plan has to allow for adequate time. That's a huge part of this, especially as a funder now in AEWC. You don't always have the time, but it took us 2 years to put this plan together. So we started the project in 2021. We didn't deploy until 2023 because it took that amount of time to build the trust. And this is built on trust that we've already worked together for 15 years. So that adequate time is a key element for this to be successful. Unforeseen obstacles. So, I've been a logistic person in the Arctic. Shit's always going to go wrong, right? No matter what, no matter how much you plan, it's just going to happen. And so we allow for that flexibility within this program to learn, to figure out what works, to take advantage of what doesn't work. As you guys heard, I'm a coach. Errors are a statistic for a reason, right? Every single game, you're going to make a mistake, right, Kea? My daughter's here. You're going to make a mistake every single game. It's a statistic, and we learn from it. And so that's a big part of this program as well. And then the ownership of the data and sustainability. So this is kind of the roadmap of how we looked at the co-production of this program. It is 3 regions, so it's actually the PI is based out of University of Washington, Jan Newton, and it's 3 regional associations, so you actually set the stage with the UICs, thank you. So we're the AEWC, and my joke with the Whaling Commission is we are AEWC, not AWEC. Thank you very much. For those of you that don't know what an UIC is, ask around and you'll find out. We have 3 regional associations, so it's Pacific Islands, the Pacific Northwest, and Alaska. So the 3 of us are working together. Each one of us have several Indigenous partners with whom we're working. We also have the technology group, So Far Ocean, who makes the buoy, and then we've all added kind of education pieces, as well as Weston Solutions. I don't know if Megan Larson is in the room, but they have been great at project management and permitting support. So this is a big project, and there's a few key elements of what has made this successful. One is the technology. So we have a lot of the partners you heard about. The next is the technology. This technology is easy to use, it's accessible, it's relatively affordable. I say relatively because $6,000 to me is not cheap, but it's a lot better than the $150,000, $200,000 that these big wave buoys are. It's also useful. That's a key aspect. Not just easy to use, but useful. This is the buoy. This is more information about it. It's a SOFAR spotter wave buoy. It measures wave height, wave direction, wave period, sea surface temperature. It does that through a GPS, so it doesn't have an accelerometer in it. It's a GPS movement. It's about the size of a basketball, because in my life, everything is about basketball. It's easy to pick up. So really easy to use. And when you think about, like I was involved in the ConocoPhillips and Shell buoy deployments. I think Scotty's in the room. We had a pucker factor, right, of when we were deploying those buoys. This one's a lot easier. This can be by 1 or 2 people. It's solar powered, it has a strobe, and it transmits data every 15 minutes on Iridium or cell phone. So it's this really easy to use, accessible technology that provides important information that's needed for decision making. So without this technology, this wouldn't be as successful. You can see on the picture above on the top left, that's kind of the mooring design. The buoy has to be moored to a float because the buoy needs to be able to move. And what we found is the buoy is the easiest part of this, right? It's the mooring and the shackles and the anchor that's really the key for this to be successful. This picture on the bottom is a really good example of just the buoys all getting solar charged and activated. They're in Utqiagvik before this season. And then the one on the right, that was a buoy that was deployed at Little Diomede by Peter Osena. So this is the step-by-step kind of approach. And as you heard, like being involved in the proposal process. So this is before we even proposed to NSF, we included AWC, asked them to be involved in it. Of course, it was due right during whaling, because that's when it always happens. But we were still able to work with them. Through the planning, we had enough funding in the budget for planning. And the NSF Convergence Accelerator was actually a great grant for that because it included planning. But we had a lot of planning time. We were basically at every AWC meeting for 2 years with maps, with hunters giving us information of where they would like it. There were some that were not interested. There were some that were very interested. I think John was interested just because Crawford was interested. A little competitive. It was really it was almost 2 years full of meetings trying to get together. Once we started, so in 2023, early 2023, we realized we were a little bit overloaded with trying to make it happen, and so we brought on UIC Science as a contractor who really started coordinating, bringing it all together. There's a lot of work that goes into getting all of the materials, getting the equipment, getting the training, working with the facilitators, and they've done a great job in that coordination. And then the next step is the deploy and the recover. As a permitter for 20 years, permitting is a huge piece of this and can be a pain, right? One of the things that Stacy and I were able to kind of work out is we wanted the hunters to be able to move buoys as needed so that it was really still about where they wanted it versus where scientists wanted it. And so we permitted polygons around an area with the Army Corps and with the state. And at first, when we approached them, they're used to buoys being permitted like on a point basis. But they were really open to this polygon when we kind of talked about it being based on Indigenous knowledge. And so with that, we were able to get it permitted where they could move it. And that actually worked out really well. We had a few instances of where we deployed it was really heavy current, and it just pulled the buoy right under, so we were able to move it. We had the first season a sailboat move it without being planned. So there were some good lessons learned on making the flag on the buoy itself more visible. And then it was been really successful. We have in 2023 we had 13 buoys that were deployed, 3 out of Wainwright, 7 out of AWEC, and 3 out of Point Hope. And then based on the success of that program and people using the information, this season we had 26 that were deployed. Savunga had 1, Gamble had 1, Diomede had 2, Point Hope had 3, Wainwright had 6, and AWEC had 10. Excuse me, and Kaktovik had 3. We lost some to currents and ice. Excuse me. That's vodka, just letting you know. Holy cow. So we're always working. We're always really working to get better through our process. Holy cow. The app is a big piece of this. How do you make your data accessible? These QR codes are actually active, so if you were to look at this app right now, it would show that we have a buoy at Marshall Islands, and then we have a buoy off of Washington coast right now. All of the Alaska buoys are obviously not in the water. This app should be live any day. Right now it's still a prototype. It should be really close in the next few weeks. And then we also, one of the issues was, this is their data. This is AWC's data. So it's up to them if they wanted to share it with everyone. You heard a lot from John about how his community shares. So this kind of tied into here. So I wanted to see if John would be open to kind of sharing how he's been able to use the data and how it's worked for you.
Well, the Wainwright lives kind of on a high bluff, and so perception can be off some. There was actually a day where we thought we can take off and go after some whales. The app just had the data just started coming in on the phone system. So we looked at it and it says 5 feet, and we're like, doesn't look like 5 feet out there, so we took off. Little did we know it was 5 feet, so we turned right back around and came back. So it's actually, in our opinion, that it can be a lifesaver, and being able to share it with everybody else can be a lifesaver for everyone else, whether you're doing research, contract work, subsistence hunting, barging activities. The concept of sharing it makes sure that everybody's safe, and there's less risk for a search and rescue effort when it could be avoided.
Thanks, John. And the information is available now on the AU's data portal, and the commissioners all voted on that, took some time to talk about it, and they all agreed that they wanted it shared. So anyone can go now and take a look at these data. And one of the other things that we're really close to having work is the data will be ingested automatically by the National Weather Service to go into their marine forecasts. So that's going to be a really helpful thing across all of the different areas. For those of you that are deploying these type of way buoys, these so far, we've also developed on our website a Friends of Backyard Buoys, where you can go in and enter the information, and that will show up on the app so that it's shared across all the different groups using it. We worked really hard to not just have the data accessible, but get the word out, right? And so we have a Facebook page. I have Alice here in the room who's worked really hard on making sure we're getting this information out to people. We have a Facebook page, both a private and a public one. We also have our website that we've been really developing, backyardbuoys.org, with our goal of when this NSF funds end by the end of this summer, we have all kinds of materials up there that you can download, training videos, as much information as possible so that any new community that wants to get involved in this has all of these resources for them. And then we've also worked hard to get the word out about both the co-production piece and the buoy piece itself. And so we've presented at conferences across all over the place. I was at the tribal conference this September. We were at the WASC conference in Nome in the spring. And this is all with co-authors of all of our Indigenous partners. So this is not just the scientists. We've also believed very strongly in the education piece of these. I think it was one of the hunters in one of the first meetings said, for this to be successful, we need less gray hairs involved in the project. So we've worked to bring in education pieces of this with members of my staff and the others. We go to the Bark Science Fair up in AWEC every summer. ANSEP does a middle school academy. We have some interns, so we're trying to really involve the youth in this as well, not just here, but in the other regions. We have a few videos out there. John and I recorded a video in DC at kind of a shady hotel room. It was a little interesting. These guys giving, John sounds fantastic. I'm not very proud of mine, but I think we still look pretty good.
I still haven't seen mine.
I've sent you the link like 3 times, dude. We also have publications we've been working on. Our goal is, that's part of one of the things we want to do in the last bit of this NSF contract, is get some publications out there for others to use. And the one just came out at the end of last year in the oceanography series. We have the link on there, and we're all co-authors on this, so it's a co-produced article as well. And then we like to share the information across partners. One of my favorite things has been watching John and Pua talk to each other. I think there was at one point when we were in Honolulu, a monk seal had hauled up on the beach, and John and Martin Edwardson are standing there looking over it, and I was like, hey, that is not for you guys to eat. But we try to really connect, across, we have the Pacific Northwest, the Pacific Islands, and Alaska. That's a huge region to try to connect people. And so we have, in Jenny's view, way too many calls, but there's still a lot of opportunities for connect. We have monthly meetings, virtual meetings. We have all hands in-persons meetings. We've made sure that our budget includes that time to connect in person. And so we all came up in 2022 to Utqiagvik. We were in Honolulu last year, and then we're heading to La Push, Washington in a few weeks. So this slide just kind of sets the stage for hearing specifically for Wainwright, John's Village, because he was the facilitator. So he's not only a co-PI in the project, he's actually one of the ones that deploys it in Wainwright. So 2023, there were 3. 2024, there were 6. And so, John, if you want to kind of talk about how and why they were picked and the process.
Well, just talking with some of the other hunters that use the ocean in Wainwright, we've looked at a map and tried to map out of where we hunt, whether it's walrus, seal, beluga, bowhead, eider ducks, and we tried to place them where we think would be best suited for the community. And that's how those locations were picked. The following year, we decided to try one in the lagoon on the backside of it, and that helped out pretty good. So it's a matter of working with the local hunters that help us decide where these are put.
Thanks. The other thing is, could you tell the story that you were telling us the other night about how elders in your community encourage technology?
I don't know if any of you have heard the stories of elders being able to look up in the sky and they can tell you what the forecast might be for the next day or two. We actually got to live through that, and we'd look to our elders and see if it's okay if we can take off. There are days where they'd say, no, it's going to get windy, hang out a little bit longer, or sure, go on, go ahead. One day, the forecast was off, and our elders went to, I don't know if you guys had watched the Marine Channel on the news, and you get the marine weather, and so their report was off as well. Thinking about the technologies that's available and looking at the time, smartphones were becoming smarter than what they were back then. We've been able to look at different weather apps to see which one is matching the current conditions. And so it became evident to our elders where now they're looking to us, the younger generation, of what the weather's going to be like. And that was, it was kind of a giggling moment, but at that same time it was a sobering moment of the times have changed so much that we need your science input in order to be able to stay safe, in order to be able to subsistence hunt. Because of your science input, we can now model what whoever does it can now model what would be safe for us. When our elders are asking the younger generation what the weather's going to be like, it's a difficult task to comprehend when you're the one usually asking the questions of that sort to them. Now they're coming to you, and you pull up your phone, you look at the different weather apps, and we'd be like, sure, let's take off. Or we're telling the elders, no, let's wait till the weather dies down. Yet it's cool breeze, calm day, and we're telling them to wait. It's a weird moment, but it's through technology that they've pushed further on us to make sure that we can work with you all so that we can make sure everybody's safe wherever we may be.
Thank you, John. Okay, this just shows you the why it's important for you to not just work in one community. This is the information for the entire wave height in Gamble on the left, and then Wainwright on the right. And you can see it's extreme for both of them, but these are wave height, and then there's also wave direction, the little rows there on the right side. So these data are available on the AU's data portal that you can go download. And Scott, you can actually find it pretty easily, just letting you know. But it shows the difference of why you need to work in different communities and why it's important to think about it of the different conditions that they're dealing with and then the different conditions then that you're dealing with. So this just shows you some of that example. Okay, so for those of you that have fallen asleep in the back of the room, this is your take-home slide. Wake back up. This really summarizes it all. We kind of compared here what the Arctic Research Plan by ARPIC says we need to be doing, and then here's what we've done. This is why this project has worked. And so I wanted to kind of close it out here I wanted to hear Jenny's thoughts and then John's thoughts on how this program has kind of met the needs of the co-production based on how you guys introduced the project. Jenny, do you want to start?
Well, I think that this is what's exciting about this project, and when we first started even just brainstorming ideas, is it is such a, the research community is so large, and it's really difficult to navigate. I personally know several of you, but, we get to see each other for 30 minutes in a meeting, and I'm usually running in 100 different directions. So for us, this is a really meaningful project because we had input from the beginning, and it's really, I know all of the policies or the principles and the plans for Arctic research have good intent, and it's obvious to us that people are listening because the key elements are there, but there's no applied practice for those concepts. And this is the first time that that's happened. And so it was really exciting for us, and we were appreciative of the opportunity, and we look forward to answering any of your questions and coming to speak with you independently on how we could better your projects and the outcomes for your projects, the methodologies. So we encourage you to reach out to us. Thank you.
Well, what this meant for me and our community is usefulness. It actually had meaning for us, and it can be used in our daily lives during the open water season. All of you have important projects, but what do they really mean to me as an individual who lives in Wainwright? How can I use that information? What can I use that information for? When can I use that information? And will you help me understand that information? The information we get off of this buoy is in terms that everybody understands. How many feet, how fast in miles per hour. It's not a graph with 10,000 numbers on there, which half a room can understand, but no one in my community would even know where to begin. So it's usefulness, and what does it really mean? I know everybody's project is important to somebody somewhere in the world for some reason, but if you're coming to my area, what does it mean to me? How can I use that? How will I benefit from that? How will the habitat that we live off of benefit from your information so that we can do better to make sure that the lifelong subsistence way of life continues to move forward in a safe manner. So that's what it means to me, Shayna, is the usefulness of it and making sure that people are safe while we're doing it. And then thinking about the other projects that might come forward. Hopefully we can find the common ground of making sure that everybody understands it's got to have meaning to me who lives in the community as well, not just to the funders that fund you in Washington, D.C. or Florida or California or Texas or Washington State. It's got to have meaning to me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're just going to put up the slide of our contact information, and then if there's times for questions, I'll just leave this up here of the small list of people that have been involved. I didn't even include all the other PAC-IUS or NANUS folks.
Maybe you can give a shout out to all those that help deploy and the whole team.
Yes, so we've had Frederick Brower. I don't know if you're in the room. He was flying in, I think, today. Frederick Brower is one of those out of Barrow. Michael Donovan Kunuk out of Barrow. We had Michael Tuzarok out of Point Hope. Peter Osena out of Diomede. Chris Gordon out of Koktovik. Carl and John Gamble and Savunga. So we have a lot of people involved. And then UIC Science, Lindsay, Cayenne, Lloyd, Pickok, Martin. A lot of different other people on this project. Okay. Thank you.
Did you put the buoys where the whales hang out?
So, yes, they happen to be there. No, we did not expect it to be, but the whales actually migrated that summer right through them, and a couple were landed just feet from it. So it doesn't affect the wildlife out there in any way, shape, or form, but the information that we got off of it was pretty cool. To be out there, but the whales were able to migrate without any problems and through the project that was put out there. So yes, we did, but inadvertently.
There's one question in the back.
There's one over here too.
I'll project, I guess. Thank you for the presentation. I was wondering if you could give us a little more detail about the data streams and how those relate to your kind of data architecture and how it's owned by AEWC and AWEC collectively, and which data specifically is in whose database, if you have those details.
Yeah, I will. Let's see, let me go back to this right here. So the data are actually owned by AEWC. They agreed to let AEWC share it publicly on our site. So we pull the data from the SOFAR Ocean API right into ERDAP on the NOAA's Integrated Ocean Observing System, ERDAP, and then each of the regional associations pulls that from ERDAP into our server. So that's how it's streamed. The app is actually through the SOFAR Ocean API, and it goes right into that into the app through University of Washington. So the question was the data streams. Sorry, I should have repeated that.
One more question, and I think we'll take a break after that.
This woman did.
Is this on? Okay. My name is Sierra. I just had a question about which came first. Was it community questions or was it the technology? And just how did you develop the technology alongside those community questions, or did you just have a tool and then bring it to that community in the hopes that it would help?
That's a great question. It was actually the latter. It was one of the technicians at SOFAR Ocean who approached Jan Newton at NANUS about the NSF convergence and said, we have this cool new technology that's like handheld wave buoys. And so then I approached Jenny, and then we approached John and kind of started talking about, would this be useful at all? So it was kind of more the technology first, but I would say it's also, we've been working together for a lot of years thinking about ideas of how do we find a project. And then we tailored it based on the feedback.
Thank you.